Welcome, everybody. Nice to have an audience here. And welcome to a really great panel to talk about the psychology of design. And I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves, talk about what they do. And we'll start with Sam.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name's Sam Edwards. I have had a long career with Soho House, recently just left. I'm now Director of Capital Projects for 55 Hospitality, which is a brand new hospitality business with some big aspirations in the future. So thank you for having me.
My name's Claire Smith and I'm Director for ABDA Design, and we specialise in hospitality interiors. So anything from hotels through to bars, restaurants, front and back of house, and I'm here to look at this from an interiors perspective.
Hi, and I'm Karen Fewell. I would say I've had a lifetime in hospitality, as my parents were hoteliers and I grew up in a hotel. But more recently, 25 years in marketing, and the reason why I'm here today is because I'm nearing the end of a Masters in Consumer Psychology, and I'm here to add that side of how to make hospitality experiences better using psychology.
Great, thank you very much. Now, the psychology of design, I couldn't guess what it is, but start, Karen, you tell me what it is. Well, I'm going to ask you as well, but you start.
Well, from my perspective, it's the science behind the art and the operation. So how do we use what we know about the brain to make the hospitality experience better, whether that's in some cases putting people on uncomfortable chairs because we want them to behave in a certain way, and the opposite, we might be putting them in a really comfy environment because we want them to spend in a different way. So it's all that science behind the art of the design and the way the operation runs.
And I think linking on from that, I'd agree with Karen. We don't just kind of put our fingers in the air and draw pretty pictures and put things in. There's a reasoning behind everything we do, and that's from looking at kind of people's tribes and their segments and seeing what people are like, who the visitors are going to be, and looking at how we tailor that visitor experience especially for them. And that's from anything from the furniture through to the lighting through to the customer journey.
Right. And Sam?
It's an interesting one, and thankfully we're supported so well with these industry professionals as well, because I think as developers and operators, we kind of know what we want, but not necessarily how to get there. So thankfully I've got a good team with me to help guide that process.
Right. Sam, starting with you, tell us a bit about the project that you're currently involved with and how customer behaviour has been changing and how that's going to be reflected in what you're building, what you're creating.
Sure. We have been lucky enough to purchase a 120-acre golf course in rural Northamptonshire. And we're going to be building sustainable luxury accommodation throughout the site. And that's in the form of cabins. We're also looking at a restaurant, cafe, event spaces, swim, gym, lots and lots of activities, and rewilding what is, a very non-green by sustainability credential site, with wildflower planting, huge amounts of new trees. So a really sustainable project and something absolutely brand new from the ground up, which taps into the staycation market in the UK right now, which is booming. It was already a fantastic market ahead of COVID, and COVID has enforced everyone to stay in the UK. And we've got such beautiful, beautiful locations in the UK, and we've want to take advantage of that. So staycations is happening, sustainability is happening, wellness is huge right now as well. So we're taking all of those behaviours and new things and bringing them all together for an amazing new site.
Great, thank you. So Claire, your design briefs over the last 5 years must have changed quite a degree. If you're reflecting some of the habits that Sam's seeing, talk to me about the design briefs you've been getting from clients and how they've changed.
I think there's a huge, huge focus now from a client's perspective, and I'm sure Sam will agree, on well-being. And that's not just well-being for the consumer, it's well-being for the staff as well. So it's how we integrate that whole experience between the staff that are operating the site and the customers and consumers that are visiting it, and improve that experience. We're also seeing a big kind of, because the customer journey's always been really, really important, but I think that's always kind of been looked at from an operational perspective. So how you walk the space, how you add value to that. But what we're seeing more and more is how we add value to that customer's journey or that customer's experience. So looking at things, for example, like Karen focused on furniture, looking at mattresses, beds, lighting, all of this, even to personalising that journey through tech. That's all become part of clients' briefs, which weren't there 5 years ago.
So does that make your job harder than it used to be?
Yeah. Yes.
And in what way?
I think we have to tick so many more boxes now. It's not just does it look nice, not just does it function, not just does it operate, it's does it sit with the right tech, does it sit with the right wellness perspectives, does it smell right, does it feel right, is it tactile enough? And this competition is rife now, everywhere. Everyone's seeing it's more accessible. They're looking on Instagram all the time and seeing things. So we now have to compete more and more. It is more difficult because consumers have more accessibility to design.
And just picking up on that Instagram bit, I'm Sam, how much does that influence what you're designing? Do you have a view of what this might look like in Instagram when you're putting it together?
Sometimes our clients have a view of what it might look like by looking at Instagram. We massively try and discourage our design team and our junior design team to design by Gram or design by Pinterest. That's not what we want to do. We want to create a new experience. That's not always possible. Of course, sometimes you deal with, and I'm sure you see the same, you have clients who say, I really, really like that thing I saw at so-and-so. I want to pull in an element of that. But it does influence certain generations within our business, but we try to, start with a narrative and draw back.
I think,
Yeah.
I think creating a mood board as opposed to.
I don't know whether it is.
Can you hear?
No, it's gone.
I think there's a man coming.
Well, we got 10 minutes in without a technical fault, so that's always a good start.
No, you were for a minute. What did he say?
Batteries.
Oh, batteries.
You carry on.
So just talk to me a bit about and I know we talked about Instagram, but do you find that experiences are driven by age or by socio-demographics or wealth? What is it?
So from our perspective recently, in the past, I think, and Karen and I have talked about this, there's been a lot of kind of based on demographic or generation. So what did Gen Z want? What did Gen A want? But what I'm seeing more and more with clients now, they're creating customer profiling based on what they call kind of either like tribes or segments. I'm working on a big project at the minute for a visitors attraction, and that's all been driven into segments. So kind of culture seekers, community. Okay. I'm just trying to think of another one that I saw. What was it? We had one the other day, resting. You know what I mean? It's basically people who don't go away to rest, they go away to do things.
Yeah.
And I think with hotel experiences, restaurant experiences, visitors attractions, we're working more and more to these segments or tribes because they're cross-demographic.
Yeah.
They're cross-demographic, they're cross-generations. So when you're designing more to fit into that segment or tribe.
So that fits with this psychology piece,
Yeah.
doesn't it, of those different
Completely.
groups? And I'll come back to that. So Sam, now you've got your batteries recharged.
No, it's working, Karen.
Is it working?
I don't know.
No,
No.
Issues.
no, we still have an
Out
issue
there.
on mic
Yes.
3.
No. Our man's
Are
at
they
the
still
mat.
there? Oh,
Can you help with this? Thank you.
This is, we don't have to talk now.
Yeah. So Karen, I'm going to come on to you
Yeah.
now to fill the gap of Sam. So we've always talked about hospitality, and I've been in it quite a while. We've talked about it creating fabulous memories, that wherever you go, however much you've got to spend, whatever you're there to do, you have to come away feeling better when you come out than when you went in. So tell me about the science behind that, because I get it from my heart and my gut, but there's obviously a science behind that as well.
well, you're actually right when you say it's coming from your heart and your gut, because you don't know why you're making those decisions and you've got those feelings because they are all subconscious. So basically, we're taking the world through our senses, and our senses, whether that's touch, taste, smell, etc., then determine how our brain responds emotionally, and it'll tell us whether it's something that we need to respond to fearfully, happily, etc. We will take in about most of what we take in is visually, about 80%. So that's probably no surprise to anyone, but we can actually take in the other senses through our visual as well. So our need for touch may come from textured wallpapers. So we're taking all this information in, but equally it can happen the other way around. So our emotions can stimulate how much our senses take in our environment. So kind of the work on creating that sensory environment is really important. Senses drive emotion, and it's our emotion that puts things into our brain, stores it, and most importantly, how we retrieve it, and therefore create those memories. And the more that we stimulate, the more senses we stimulate, that higher that experience and that memory will be for us. So everything you said that you feel gut-wise is right. That is what's happening, but obviously scientists know a little bit more about why.
And mixed with that, because there is something about designers and you see it and you go, oh, or whatever. But there's also that layering with the people that you meet. Do you consider that in what you're doing, or are the people just another layer that are outside of that?
So designers will actually think about, is this an environment one where we need to get people interacting with each other? Therefore, the science behind that is how you place the seating. It may be that, we were talking about this before, I feel a little bit of sensory overload having been here for 2 days. I just wanted a quiet space to go to, and that's, goes back into the design side of things, that our brain can't cope with too much cognitively. It will go into overload, and we will just need to have those quiet spaces. So it's both.
Right. And Sam, finally,
Are we back?
tell me about design. You've got a blank sheet of paper, really. Where do you start? What are the most important things that you've got to think about when you're designing and doing something from scratch?
Sure.
Your vision must be amazing.
It's so exciting, and we're so grateful for it. We're really led by the landscape. So we've assessed where the sun rises, the sun sets, what's the prevailing wind, and where the beautiful views are. So we've started from the outside and taken advantage of a stunning landscape. We've then sensitively placed the buildings. The thermal gain from the sun, the breakfast room has the most amount of sun. And so these aspects have come first. We've used natural building materials to be sympathetic to the local environment and for people to really feel like they've come away to nature. So stone, glass, timber. And the back of house is absolutely key. I'm obsessed by back of house and making sure that we've got the best staff welfare facilities and the best environment back of house to complement front of house as well. A really happy workforce that are looked after at the back house are going to be performing so well for our customers. So yeah, it's really exciting to have a complete blank picture, and also designing with flexibility in mind. It's quite, as wellness develops, is cryogenic chambers going to be the now in many years to come? So having the flexibility to design on block so that we can swap things out and keep up with the trends as well.
Brilliant. So talk to me about the brands that you see out there that you think are doing it. I'm going to ask you as well, Karen. Which brands do you think are out there that are doing it really, really well? Do you want to start, Sam?
Sure. Soho House is somewhere very close to my heart. I spent most of my career with them. Claire and I were at Shoreditch House last night having supper, and their 5th floor, they have a really buzzing bar, some ping pong tables, a house kitchen and a sitting room. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, those spaces are absolutely different to midnight. And keeping up with the organic and natural changes through the day in specific areas is really key. Soho has a home from home ethos, and to link kind of wellness and gym, club space, rooms, beautiful events, and seamlessly bring them all together under one roof, as it were, is something really special.
I think we were chatting earlier, and I've said before, for me, there's a couple of places that do it really well at the moment. So Hoxton have always nailed it. And that kind of goes a little bit to what Sam was saying. Like Soho House, they have spaces that interchange through the day part, into the evening, into nightclubs, and have this beautiful, whenever you step off the street into a Hoxton, it doesn't matter what time of the day, it has a community feel. And I think there's a big psychology behind that. It's making people feel welcome, whether they're guests, whether they're visitors for a drink, or whether they live in the community and just want to use that space for work. And I think, like Ennismore and Hoxton have nailed that. And then kind of, I guess, the newer kids on the block really would be Lock hotels. Obviously, Lock are owned by Eden, they're part of a bigger group. But when you walk into some of their spaces, it doesn't matter whether it's Manchester, Berlin, Cambridge, they all have the same vibe. And again, they've created a community. And there's a psychology behind that, I think, isn't there? It's making you feel these are apart hotels that are designed for people who are there maybe as leisure guests, they're there as kind of week guests, they're working there, they're using the gym, they're using it for leisure, entertainment. And it just, as soon as you walk into that space, it doesn't matter what time it is, day or night, they've nailed it, really. And that, Dave, for me, is kind of really big at the minute.
I would go on the other end of the spectrum and think about it, brands that are bringing in sensory elements at a much lower end of the price scale. So I stayed in Piccadilly Circus for £140 a couple of weeks ago for a work event at Sedwell. And the whole premise is that you walk in from Piccadilly Circus into tranquility. And as soon as I walked in, the soundproofing, so you couldn't hear what was going on outside. The smell was a relaxing smell. The lighting changed. And so immediately as you walk in, you calm yourself down. However, I found it didn't necessarily the whole experience work for me because the bedrooms are all soundproof. So there's no concept of time of day. So as people are walking around at 7 o'clock in the morning, when you start to hear that buzz of a hotel, there was none of that. And I found that really unsettling.
Obviously, you've talked about hotels, which have got big spaces. What about brands in restaurants or pubs or bars that you like, where they haven't got that amount of space, but they've still got to get this psychology of design in? Can you think of any pubs, bars or restaurants, putting you on the spot, that have done it well?
I'm a country bumpkin,
Ollie.
so I absolutely love the open fireplace, the nibbles and things on a menu. I think a country pub has got the opportunity to have that really old school and very basic kind of crackling fire situation going on in the winter maybe, and then the beautiful pub garden as well.
Yeah.
Take me to a pub garden anytime.
And I'm going to come on this from a slightly different angle. I was actually thinking about this. I think for me, if anyone's familiar with Watch House Coffee, there's a brand that have really kind of nailed the psychology behind their design. So first of all, their kind of head designer is a retail designer. She's worked on Aesop. She's worked on, gone completely blank on the glasses brand now, Desmond and Dempsey, but really high-end retail space. And whenever you go into one of her spaces, you know straight away. And they've made their coffee shops exactly the same as that. So the minute you walk in, you get this beautiful sensory experience. You go into Bishopsgate, it's tiny. You can't swing a cat in there, but you go in, you get this beautiful sensory experience. You get the retail offer, and then they've really nailed that kind of chilled, high-end, just vibe across their kind of 9-10 stores now, I think. So.
I think as well with Watch House, you know as a customer what you're expected to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're not just expected to come in and go, oh, isn't this wonderful? You know how to order your coffee and you're not going to be alienated by it. What about you, Karen?
What was the question again?
Well, just a different, so pubs, bars and restaurants rather than hotels.
So I think with every space, you get the space. I know Claire and the team, they'll be given a space and they have to make the best of it. So if it's a small space but they need to make it better, then the way they put certain colours on the wall, for example, will open up the space. They may say, well, actually, this is a real opportunity to make something really small and cosy, and that's the brand has bought that space particularly because of that. It could be that they're in a restaurant where half of the customers want a cosy space, half want to be completely stimulated. It's not all about this relaxing stuff. There's some designs are done for that integration, that stimulation. So you could take a restaurant, for example, and create a series of booths that separates you off a little bit from the noise and all the stuff that's going on, and they create. So the idea of using the psychology to help build that experience, you can do in any environment. It's not just hotels.
Which quite often in a restaurant environment as well, if space is a premium or wanting to create those different layers of, I guess, vibe, then obviously you put a chef's theatre in or a chef's tables, you have an open kitchen, you have stalls along there. It encourages people to sit alone or slightly quicker service maybe on some occasions or a longer experience on another. But it's a great way to utilise a really small space.
What do you think of Dishoom?
Delish.
Yeah, definitely.
Think about the design.
Dal Makhani. Yes, please. No, great. I mean, they've got some lounge spaces, some more dining spaces. I mean, similar to the restaurant that we're designing, we're looking at our market, which is probably couples and friends that are getting away from maybe an urban dwelling to more of a relaxed kind of weekend away. So we've created some dining height tables, some lounge tables, some at the bar.
Yeah.
But for the majority, we've looked at privacy, because you probably want to get away and have some time with your partner. Whereas restaurants we've designed in the past, you know, high street restaurants in London, it's maybe a little bit more about packing everyone in for a quick experience to get them in, sat down, good average spend and out. So the psychology of understanding who's using your spaces and how they will be designed, again, with flexibility at the core of everything that we're looking at.
That actually really reflects onto something like, 'cause I'm working on a visitors attraction at the moment, and their big restaurant space has never been a destination, and what they're trying to do is make it a destination. At the moment, it's just a vast room of 150 chairs. Well, no one wants to sit and have an experience in that. So we've separated it into 3 spaces. So you have a cafe bar, which is more for the day part, where you can see your food, and less kind of cozy, comfy chairs, but more chairs. So you might have a 45-minute dwell time, for example. Then we go through into kind of the restaurant area, where we've got lots of banquettes and booths, and the view when you look out of the bifold doors is stunning. So all the banquette is done to face that way.
Okay.
Then as we go out into the patio area, we have lower level seating. So again, that view isn't obstructed. And the people using that patio area are likely to be people for a romantic evening, having cocktails, sitting out there, you know, watching fireworks, watching the sunset. So again, it's small pockets of spaces with fires and things like that. And I think that psychology comes into any restaurant space, doesn't it? When you design it, is looking at your users, your kind of like I said, your tribes, and how that space is going to be used.
How important is design as opposed to offer and service?
Can't separate them. Absolutely can't separate them. If somebody is starting a new hospitality venue, they've got an end view of where that customer wants to be and what they want to be enjoying it, and then everything is working back from that.
And I think, you know, it's like what comes first, doesn't it? The chicken or the egg? But all of us, I think counted service as being something that's really, really key for any hospitality venue. I mean, you can go somewhere and it looks amazing and the lighting's great and you feel great, but if you've got to wait 45 minutes for a drink, you're never going to go back again. And I think so. It's there is no difference, is there? I think it's
We had that same conversation a few months ago when we were talking about branding and the design agency. Actually, you can't claim that you're going to solve everything for the end customer, because you could do the most amazing design and then the service team can absolutely ruin the experience.
I mean, what you can do is design out those problems and look at the ergonomics of how staff are using the space, how to get the drink to the customer quicker. I mean, there's the lazy waitress that doesn't actually see you, but looking at where your potential flaws are going to be and designing that into the scheme from the offset.
That's something we've been doing. So we're working with Sam at the moment on the operational aspects of the design, so more of the back of house areas. And with the team, I think that's something you're really, really focusing on.
Focused / obsessed.
Like, where are those pinch points? And that's the great thing about being involved in a project from the ground up. We've got that opportunity to iron out those issues. So hopefully what you will get is a space that's really well designed with great service.
And one of the changes that presumably you've seen as well, Sam, and well, you've all seen, is that mixed with tech as well, with design. You know, if you've got really round bars, are you going to allow people to order at the table? What are you going to do about payment? So you've got to think about tech in those changing consumer trends as well.
I think tech, and you might disagree with me here, I think it's really site dependent, because, for example, we had a quick bite to eat earlier upstairs and it was just a straight away order, come to table, had a few issues, but didn't really integrate with anybody else. But it was we just wanted something quick and easy. I think when you're looking at something like Sam's project, it's about the experience. And for me, experience doesn't necessarily involve tech. I don't know. It's a bit.
We're designing everything in, so we're doing the face-to-face potential of ordering, checking in, etc. And we're doing it the expensive way because we've got that, and then we've got the tech for people to fall back on as well. Not everyone wants to use the tech. Ordering room service through WhatsApp, it's quite nice to pick up the phone and ask for exactly what you want. But that's certainly streamlining things, and you can get into a whole realm of health and safety and reporting, etc. It's actually been amazing to look at the tech centre here today and what's coming out and the way everything's integrated, and AI as well.
Yeah.
That's a whole another world.
That's a whole.
I think that, just touching on what you said again, then it all goes back to that designing for your kind of segment, and it's looking at if an attraction such as yours, you're going to have a really wide spectrum of people visiting there. Some who want tech to be part of their experience, and people who just don't. So I think it's.
And there'll be some people. So from the brain's perspective, adding tech for some will make less processing for that person's brain. For example, for me, picking up the phone I find really annoying when you call down to reception and no one answers, and that actually frustrates me and gets me annoyed. I would have preferred to WhatsApp this morning when I wanted to ask a question. However, for others, the tech side of them will add a load of stress on the brain and actually ruin the experience. So I think it really is about making sure that you've got options for both.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
And Claire, really, how do you use design to, you've talked about behaviours of customers. How do you design to encourage certain behaviours or even discourage certain behaviours from customers?
I think Karen touched on it earlier on. It's looking at creating zones maybe. So for example, if you want people to stay for a couple of hours and have cocktails and a meal and do that, you create comfy furniture, nice dull lighting, easy service, everything. If you want people in and out in 15 minutes, then it's a quick small table, chairs, harsh lighting. It really is just looking at the FF&E really, I guess. All the lighting, service, again, what you want to do. But yeah, we look at all that aspect. When we first meet with a client, it's what we look at to kind of encourage different customer behaviours. And I kind of went back, actually, when I was thinking about this earlier, to a conversation we all had about loungers, or a group who encourage customer behaviour. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the loungers group. They're in most towns. But what they do to encourage customer behaviour is amazing. Through every aspect of service, their lighting changes, the music changes, everything like that, and that encourages consumer behaviour.
Yeah.
So,
and the science behind that, Karen,
Well,
is...
there's so many things that we can tweak. If we remember that our environment will determine how we respond to it, and then basically how we're going to go and act. So colours, for example, light colours open up spaces. Green's a really interesting colour. I was reading a paper where it was talking about environment conscious people booking hotel rooms via websites, and if the hotel room showed a photo of some green tones, they were more likely to book it. So it can actually travel all the way through to that point of booking, never mind the experience when you're online. And I think green's interesting as well. I've just actually repainted my office green because it makes you more creative, and my dissertation is all about creativity. But textures, certain textures and the way they're presented can make walls seem taller or wider. Or if we go for a space and we maybe have lots of curves in the tables, the chairs, that will suggest comfort. Whereas if we go for more lines and angular, it's the opposite. So there's so many different things people can do. But what I would say is there is a lot of research, academic research out there, and it's very easy to just take one line from it and go, oh, that's what we must do. And there's a big word of caution there not to do that, to make sure you've checked how valid that research is.
Yeah. So Sam, your project, where you're talking about the research, what are you doing and why, and how are you going to check it with your customers?
It's an interesting one. We want to create wellness and switching off and having the ability to have time to do things. There was a question the other day when I was doing a presentation about this. Doesn't seem that a lot to do there. I mean, we've got outdoor racket sports and wellness facilities. But that whole idea is not to have a huge amount to do, and maybe just a sense of exploring and time to take in your surroundings. we know what our target we'd like our target market to be, and we've had to look at things like, the way we're getting people to site, what market we're tapping into, the health trends. There's a huge minefield, and also caveat: we haven't got planning permission just now, so it's all very much a design stage. And I'm certainly taking things that we've talked about today further back to my desk, because there's some really exciting things being talked about.
And this, Karen, this science behind the natural experience, you were talking about internal, but the external bit and the beauty and all of that, how does that affect people's brains?
We actually spend 90% of our life in buildings, which is actually really horrifying when you realise that. But yet the outside environment reduces our stress levels. It brings about many more positive emotions. It makes us concentrate better, makes us more creative, joy, all of those things. And actually there's a lot of research about how unwell being inside makes us. And a lot of it comes down to how those spaces have been designed. So clutter in an environment will induce sense of stress. I could imagine somebody who spent 3 days here might feel that because they've been so stimulated. Having too many constraints, so too much furniture in a space, for example, that can have that same impact. And if things don't work together, our senses don't like it when they're incongruent. So if you have one sense being stimulated to relax, but actually you've got something else going on. Maybe you've got a smell in there that's been designed for relaxation, but actually is too noisy. Then it's going to be incongruent. We won't respond to it well. So designers are actually in a really powerful position where they can bring that outside and all those good benefits of being outside, inside, into the internal environment, and actually change how we feel. And I think things like senses, like flowers, for lavender, for example, will induce a certain behaviour. Changing the light, bring as much of that outside, inside, is cognitive restorative.
So taking that on board, design, because I've worked in marketing all my life, and you show a design to somebody and half the room will go, don't like that, and half the room do go. And it gets very personal. How are you going to avoid being that personal? Or are you going to say, well, I like it, so I'll do that?
We're supported by some real professionals. We're going back to what we said here. Our spa treatment rooms were 13 square foot, and it just wasn't meters. It wasn't big enough. And part of our belief is to have space where we are. We have 120 acres to play with. So we've gone back to the drawing board and increased all of those areas. All of the glazing has the ability to open as well. Going back to flexibility, so we can bring the outside in with fresh air as well. Air handling units and air conditioning, they're there for a reason mechanically, to replace the air, but there's nothing like the actual fresh air. So we want to bring as much of the outside in. We're really excited. I'm going to definitely be going back and having a look at a few designs as well, actually.
I think it's really important to, when you pick up on the focus group, because I've worked in marketing 25 years as well, I know that feeling, is to remind people we're not a focus group of 5 people, or the 5 people sat around this room, or the one person that's saying, I hate that design, and not necessarily the customer. Yeah. And so making sure people take that step back and remember why they're looking at that design.
We're constantly having to say that to our design team, actually, because design is so subjective, and sometimes you're designing to a brief, and you do have to just remember you're not the customer. That's what the
so
customer
final
wants.
question for each of you: the future. So you've got it all come from different perspectives, but where do you see the future of your particular perspective? So we'll start with you, Claire.
Thought you might. For us, I don't know. We're seeing more and more of a nod, like I said, to well-being, and as boring as the kind of, well, not boring, but you keep hearing people sustainability. But I think it's becoming more important to the consumer when they're looking at where they're staying. Is that venue sustainable? Are the materials they're using sustainable? Where it's not just a case for the designer anymore. It kind of goes back to the consumer and what they're looking for. So we're really having to kind of incorporate that into designs now. And like I said, it's it's that contradiction of well-being and tech and how that integrates. And I'm not sure exactly how that is yet, but that's definitely something we're seeing more and more of.
Sam?
Well, from a food perspective, I think nutrition is really important. Then the stays now tailored to nutritional programs. I think cooking with fire is coming back, and looking at some of the equipment here today, that's definitely back in, cooking on open flame, probably because of the price of electricity, no doubt. But what Claire was saying about sustainability isn't a greenwashing effect as well. I think if you're going to do it, you need to do it properly. I think customers are aware that you're just ticking a box to look sustainable. So doing it for the right reasons, and you don't need to scream and shout about it. It needs to come from the heart. And in terms of what people are going to be doing, potentially going on less trips a year and putting some savings aside for a smaller amount of trips. Maybe it's me going into my 30s, but maybe not so many boozy weekends and coming back feeling worse than you left. And focusing on nutrition and wellness.
Definitely does seem kind of lean towards that, I think, doesn't there? When you only have to come around here to look at the different kind of food offers that are there, the low and low alcohol, and just how big wellness is becoming. So,
Karen?
Well, obviously I'm staking my career on the fact that psychology and bringing it into hospitality is going to have a future. But it's really only the last 25 years that we've really started to understand the role that emotions make in decision making. So the more that we discover in the science side of things and make it more accessible, which is what I'm hoping to do with people like designers, then we can only make it better, because then designers can create the experience that operators want to create, and most importantly, they can make it better for the customer.
Brilliant, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I have what you like, which is a classic country pub with the big open fires.
I can't hear you.
I have a classic country pub with the big open fires and the big garden.
Superb.
And I'm finding it, trying to balance the tech side of it with keeping the traditional side of it. And that's why I'm here today, to try and find the ways of, bringing in technology, but keeping everything exactly the same. It's an old building, needs completely revamping, but I notice customers now we'll never go down the app route, but people like putting phone sockets and everything else has really become a necessity for everybody with everything. So for me, it's very much, as you're saying, you've got to take your tradition, but then give the customers the tech that they want, but still see the person behind that, your product. And what would be the worst thing, I think, in this industry is for people to be replaced by nothing.
How much did we all hate it during the pandemic when you couldn't have face-to-face? That's what hospitality is. It's face-to-face and dealing with. But I don't think you're ever going to get away from technology now, because it became such a part of our lives. I think, if that's something you're looking at doing, is integrating that, is going back to understanding maybe who your kind of tribe are, who come and use you, and kind of getting that broken down and looking at what they want in terms of tech and how you bring that into your space, maybe. Would you say that's...
Yeah, I was just thinking back to COVID when you couldn't have a bloody menu anywhere and everything was on a QR.
Yes.
But QR on the table / the menu, you've got the mix of old school menu versus the QR code. It's going to be a tricky one. Personally, I say keep with the tradition, but I totally see where you're coming from. Yeah. I'll come and sit by the fireplace.
We do have a really, really strong need for touch. So actually holding a menu is a really important element of an experience. It'll be different. You might notice some people when they go around a clothes shop and they're touching everything. I'm that person. I've got a really high need for touch. So I'm one of those people that needs to feel the menu. I need to hold my heavy cutlery. That's all a really important part of the hospitality experience. No, I don't think it will.
Any other questions?
I've got a very specific question. So I'm in the process of renovating a pub, a local pub, into a gastro pub. And in terms of tabletops, So trying to meet the idea of the Instagrammable shot of the food, but also that warm textural tabletop. What would you recommend?
That's coming to me, isn't it? As it what kind of vibe is your pub? What kind of, is it traditional?
It
one?
is traditional, 3 open fireplaces, but more of a high-end
I
food,
probably,
yeah.
this is just me throwing it out there, but use a natural material maybe. Go for like maybe a kind of marble effect, depending, I don't know what the acoustics are like in your space. So if you've got a lot of solid surfaces, that's not going to be ideal, but that's going to really kind of, when you're looking at food, really kind of bring it out. But definitely look at like a natural stone type of material, but
Yep.
well, happy to have a chat. So.
Great, thank you.
I
Go on,
think marble
Sam,
can be
yes.
quite cold sometimes, though, to the touch.
Yeah.
But it's,
So making sure it's in the right,
environment.
space like that. For me, timber all the way as well, because you can really, that's a real kind of pub material. And whether that be a rough timber or something a little bit more of a thicker veneer. Sounds exciting.
Where is it? Or
Nice.
whereabouts? One.
Anything else? So, one last question. Your one main hope for the next 12 months? Sam, apart from the fact you get planning permission,
Planning permission,
which is a
please.
biggie.
That Sam gets planning permission.
It's a
Because
bit-
it's 10 minutes away from my house and I really want that place to open.
So, planning permission, anything else?
What my hopes? Well, right now we are seeding the site with 4 different types of wildflower mix. So our hands are with Mother Nature. So I keep peering down a soily tilled ground, hoping that we're going to be 6 foot high with beautiful wildflower meadows. And that genuinely is my hope. That's what's keeping me awake right now. I want to rewild that landscape properly.
Great.
Genuinely for me, apart from Sam's planning permission, is, we're working on some beautiful, beautiful projects at the moment, just across a really kind of wide, varied sectors. And it would just really be lovely to see them start happening and create some exciting new hospitality experiences.
Brilliant.
Well, one, to get my blooming masters finished.
Yes.
and then really, I've really noticed a real energy this year in terms of suppliers to the hospitality industry. And I feel that everyone's sick of all the excuses over the last few years of why we can't do certain things. And despite all the challenges that are out there with cost of living, etc., people are just really determined, and they're really determined to make it work. And I just want that to continue for the next 12 months and longer.
Agree.
Brilliant. I'm glad everything's back on the agenda, and I'm really glad everything's moving again. And thank you very much for being a great panel, and thank you, audience, too.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.